Okay, I was really worried, and then the ending happened, y'all. Oh my god, that was so much fun. So it starts off with two guys getting ready to do something, and they've got their flashlights, they've got their camera, and then they drop the bomb on us. We're going to the cemetery to look for the Rice family. Ooh. And they just say this like we're supposed to know what's gonna happen. So apparently they're ghost hunters. And even though this is on digital camera, it has a really shot on video kind of vibe, which I really liked. And I've mentioned before that I have a soft spot in my heart for shot on video films. So it felt very shot on video, and I really enjoyed that. Now in the first 5 minutes, it's mostly just them getting ready to get going. And so it does sort of start to lag a little bit. And I'm like, this is a 30-minute movie, guys. You gotta tighten that up a little bit. And finally, 5 minutes in, they're driving to the cemetery. Most of the movie is them driving to the cemetery. I wanted to yell, brevity, people, brevity. But honestly, they were cutting out things that didn't matter. So I couldn't be mad. They would literally cut in and out every now and again just to show that what they were still doing. So it was progressing the story and there wasn't chaff. I'm like, oh my god, okay, I'm on board, let's go. And then they pull up to the cemetery. Here's a little interesting tidbit for you. A lot of people don't know the difference between a cemetery and a graveyard. A graveyard is attached to a church, a cemetery is not. The more you know. And it's a modern cemetery. I thought it was going to be an older cemetery, but okay, ghosts can happen anytime. And then they're just walking through the graveyard and looking at the graves. A song from Repo the Genetic Opera popped into my head. Things you see in a graveyard. If you've never seen Repo the Genetic Opera, please do. It is such an underrated gem. I love it. It's very Wagnerian. And they find the Rice grave. Ooh, and there's a dolly on top of it, and it's covered in moss. It's been there for years. Ooh. And then they leave. They leave so they can get ready to come back at night. Because of course it has to happen at night. And then it cuts to them coming back to the cemetery by way of Jersey Mike's. They had to make sure to add in the fact that they were going to go eat before they go to the cemetery. Because it's important. And they're so amazed. It's snowing in May in Connecticut. Really? They are honestly like, I don't think I've ever seen this before. I wanted to be like, dude, I went to New York in March for spring break when I was in high school. This was back in the 90s, a long time ago. And it was snowing in March in New York. I'm certain it's completely plausible for snow to happen in Connecticut in May. They're mentioning that they're going to meet their friend Gina at the graveyard because, you know, there's safety in numbers. And at the graveyard, they meet Gina, who has brought a book about the Rice family murders. And the guy holding the camera literally turns the camera on himself to explain what they're doing. And he's holding it by the lens. You can see his finger in the shot. Okay guys, just FYI, don't hold the camera like this. And you can see why. So the sun hasn't even gone all the way down yet. And I know exactly why. Cemeteries usually close at sundown. But you can still see that it's dusk and they're walking around. And then all of a sudden, something cuts one of the guys on his neck. And it's not like he just had ketchup in his hand and swiped it on his neck. Oh my god. It was a great piece of theater. I loved it. It was great. And he's all of a sudden like, okay, no, this is too real. Let's go. Okay, we'll stay for 15 more minutes, but then we're gone. So they're still walking. And Gina, who hasn't really said much, she's basically just there so someone else can hold a camera. She's gone missing. And they turn around and she's gone. Only her camera remains because they need that footage. Now, both guys have cameras. So after they lose Gina, they're like, GTFO. So they're running back to the car and they get to where the car was, but the car is missing. Oh no! And when that happens, all of a sudden, The guy who got cut on the back of his neck starts theater retching. I mean, literally, it was so for the back row. You could feel the anger he has towards his parents in the puke. And this part just made me fall in love with this movie. It was just so camp. It was great. So they decide they're going to run out of the cemetery, and they're getting lost. All of a sudden, they hear a velociraptor. Literally, I swear it was the sound the velociraptor makes in Jurassic Park. And they're like, oh crap, we gotta run, we gotta get out of here, we gotta get out of here, we gotta call for help. Then it cuts to one of the guys. He's sitting under a tree, and he's like so scared he's crazy, and he's like, we left the phones in the car. We can't call for help. And then a Party City Monster Glove slowly pulls out from behind the tree and yanks him out. And literally, it takes like 3 seconds for this to happen, and nobody says anything. No, I mean, the camera guy has no reaction whatsoever until he gets pulled off, and I'm like, there was literally enough time to tell this guy to move, and they didn't tell him to move. So the camera guy just bolts. And then he comes across a guy who's supposed to be a stranger, but it's obviously his friend because they're wearing the same pants. And he goes up to the guy and he goes, Sir, can you help? But you can tell it's going to be a monster because he's got a freaking death shroud over his head. So the camera guy looks away and then looks back, and guess what? It's a ghost. Literally, the guy's wearing a mask that looks like the Scream, and he screams, and then the camera falls to the ground ever so gently because they don't want to break the camera. Seriously, it's like, oh. And then we get a little note that says that this footage was found May 20th or something like that in 2018. And Gina, Alex, and Christian have been missing for 2 years. Let this be a warning for those who wander. Ooh. This movie was so much fun. It really was. I mean, it wasn't the best movie, but it's one of those perfect storms. You know what I mean? I've told you that I love movies like this because, I mean, they tried their damnedest, and it was fun to watch. And sure, it lagged at some points, but that ending just made up for everything. That was so fun. So have you seen this movie? If you have, leave me a note down below. And of course, if you want to see this movie, I highly encourage it. It will be linked in the description. It's only 34 minutes long. Just give it a go. I mean, do it for your lunch break. So, that's the end of this episode of 31 Days of Found Horror. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for tuning in. And come back tomorrow for another found footage nightmare.